Hi, everyone. Very good evening. I hope you can hear me loud and clear. This is Eugene, if you haven't met me last night. And it's great to see all of you coming back for the second day of our ITF community program. It's good to see all of you once again. So without further ado, I'm just going to flash up the slides to get a good introduction of what we're going to be covering this evening. Okay, so once again, welcome everyone. So second day of what we'll be covering. And I have with my greatest pleasure to invite a speaker for tonight, Dr. Radkar. And he will be covering on the topic together with myself on long-term athlete development. Dr. Radkar, over to you.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah, here.
Okay,
yes, we can
perfect.
hear you.
So, Eugene, thank you very much. So I'm Dr. Kaustubh Radkar, based in Pune. Just a small background. I started swimming when I was 8 years old. So I've been an athlete for 31 years so far. I'm the only athlete currently to finish 25 full Ironmans, and I'm certified by the International Olympic Committee. This topic is very, very close to my heart. It's something I face day in and day out with my personal coaching, and it's something us at ITF would really like to explore. I know there's a lot of good coaches, parents, mentors, some athletes here. So I'll talk for some time and we'll leave room for discussion at the end. Okay. Give you a little we are going to cover. So the topic overview is basically we're going to understand, the different growth and development variations in children. More importantly, which is very, very important. Not a lot of us, including me at the point, had experience in dealing with young kids. So it's a completely different phenomenon. Obviously, to discuss some of the skills necessary to create training fun for both children and youths. And then obviously we're going to give you a little overlay of how to plan training for children. Please understand, in 1 hour, it's going to be difficult to give it the whole rule book, but we'll do our best. So Eugene has a question.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Radkar. I hope all of you can hear me loud and clear. Let's start off today's topic with looking at this picture. So this is a picture taken by myself. I have got athletes in this picture. This picture was taken in 2016. And before I tell you a little more information, very quickly, I'd like you just to type into the chat. Tell me how old do you think these guys are? Just quickly type it in the chat. Type in the age. 18 to 20, 20, 15, 30s, 17. Keep it going. 16, under 23, 14 to 20. That's a huge age gap. 12 to 18, 15, 16. Okay, so I think everyone has given their input. Is quite a large range from 12 to 30. 46, well done. Okay, so thank you for your response, everyone. What I'm trying to now give you would be the exact details of these gentlemen. So this race was in Australia. It was a Oceania Youth Junior Cup. So it's a bit different, it's not really a junior. It was only for boys from the ages of 16 and 17 years old of age only. I'll repeat that, the 16 or 17 years of age only. So what that means is all of these guys here are actually of that age group. Okay. Now, if you can see the guy in blue, just give me a thumbs up if you can see the guy in blue. Can you guys see the guy in blue? Show me a thumbs up. Yep. So that's one of the boys I'm still currently coaching. Okay, so he was 17 years of age. And the guy beside him, two down, the guy in black. So the guy in blue and two guys down on black, that's his a fellow countryman, also 17 years of age. Now, the guy in blue at this age was standing at 1.75 meters tall. And obviously from this picture, you can also see that the chap over here jumping, even though he's jumping, is obviously way taller than 1.8. Okay, and if you look at the extreme ends, you might see some of these boys on the left, a very well-built guy, and that's why maybe some of you may say they are in their late 20s or 30s. And on the furthest right, you can see one small little looking guy that looks like a pre-adolescence. So what I'm trying to tell you guys is just by looking at the body structure, and this is going to lead into this evening's presentation, we can't really tell a real age, especially if you're working with youths, because there's so many factors that we need to consider, which I'm going to hand it back over to Dr. Radkar to give you more information. And I hope it can now give you a better mindset of understanding that it's not so simple when it comes to training youth triathletes. Okay, with that, let me know if you have other questions down the road. Dr. Radkar, back to you.
Okay. So as you can tell from the picture, right? It's very, very difficult to distinguish just looking at someone what age they are, right? And so your training metrics will also have to change after knowing, what stage of development your athlete is. And when we look at stages of development, we look at multiple ones. First one is the biological age, obviously how old, how are your athletes going? And a great example of this is that most people have a Garmin these days. And when you do a high intense workout, you can go in Garmin Connect and it will tell you
Sorry, guys, we may just have lost Dr. Radkar. Let's just give him a bit.
sorry guys, is this better? Okay, so apologies. There's no power here in Pune, and it's raining quite heavily, so I'm struggling a little bit. So we'll go into the stages of development. How do we categorize children in the stages they are? And okay, Rupam, thank you very much. The first one is the biological age, and I was giving you an example that most of us have a Garmin. So your chronological age is, obviously your birth date wise age. But when you do a hard workout, especially, and you do a good training, plan, maybe it's 3 months, 6 months, you will start seeing that your athletic age starts to diminish or go lower, which means your body is telling you that you're getting younger than your chronological age, but it's very difficult to put that in youth, right? And the first thing we try to look is to see the step by step how quickly are they gaining weight is one of the metrics doctors look at. How quickly are they gaining height? Are they at the national average for each country in weight and height in that ratio? Obviously, chronological age and the age by years. The next thing is the development age, and again, it's another metric that we use to see where an athlete is. There's simple tests one can do to see what development age the child is at or the youth is at. Again, this one is tricky. Women, especially or young girls, are going to display and obviously going to be a little more social and have a little more cognitive maturity and than most of your youth males. The next one is your training age. Obviously, it's important to know. All right, actually, now. Yes, no. If you can give me a thumbs up, it would be really helpful. Better? Okay, Rupam, thank you very much. The next one I was talking about is obviously how long have athletes been training? And that is very, very important. So just to give you an example, if someone has been swimming from the age of 5, as opposed to an athlete who started swimming at age 8 or 9, athlete who started swimming at 5 is going to have a much bigger duration, and they are probably going to be at a little advanced level than someone who's just starting fresh off the block. Okay, so what is the model that we use to look at your athlete development? The first one, obviously is from age 6 to 9, and the word. I'll just wait for someone to answer if they can see the slide. Okay, perfect. So obviously the first one is the first 3 letters fun are highlighted. So age 6 to 9, you want to focus on basic movement skills. Obviously, you want to give those kids some body weight exercises. Obviously, you have to be very, very careful in utilizing exercises such as push-ups, pull-ups. They may need assistance, especially on the pull-ups. You have to be very, very careful if you're going to give them, basic, simple sit-ups. Make sure their form is right. Most importantly, in this age group, you want to introduce them to as many sports as possible. A small caveat is that their balance and handling is not developed at this age. So be careful if you are going to introduce them to sports such as cycling, especially. Okay. The next age group obviously is the learn to train. Again, like I said, the girls are in this from 8 to 11. They're going to hit puberty roughly around 11, 12, whereas the boys are in that 9 to 12 age group. This is where we start giving them specific skills of sport. This is where usually the youth competition starts, whether it's individual or teams. The objective here is to, start teaching them, simple aspects that we use in training, such as a proper way to do warm up, proper way to do cool down, basic stretching, because by now their cognitive skills are starting to develop. They can understand directions much more. The third one is the train to train. I really love this term, train to train. Again, 12 to 16 for the boys, 11 to 15 for the girls. This is where they are likely hit puberty. So you can start developing endurance. This is where usually a lot of cross-country training is, sort of given to kids. Obviously, they are going to start seeing changes in strength as well. So this is a good time to start adding light strength training, not full blown, but slowly progressing them. Obviously, to help them maintain flexibility, because this is the time where especially males are going to start developing much more. You're going to start seeing them get taller all of a sudden. So it's important to keep them flexible. Obviously, this age group, I would say, is one of the most competitive ones in India. 16 is when most Indian kids, unfortunately, will get into the 9th and 10th standards, and parents start worrying about what college is my son or daughter going to go to. So this is where competition starts increasing, whether it's at district level or state level, or you get the school nationals or the CBSE nationals, one of them. The next category, 16 and above, is obviously the train to compete. Obviously, now the goal has shifted to winning medals, whether it's for your university or your college or for your country. And then the last one, obviously, is the transition where you're going to become more of an amateur to a professional athlete, where now you are training to win. Obviously, you're going to see a high amount of intensity, high amount of volume. Obviously, you're going to have to categorize your races, and then you'll have to develop a strong training program that will help you peak for these races. So your performance is the key in this train to win. Okay, next. So this is just a simple chart which tells you, and this will be put on YouTube, so you can take a look as a tool that gives you a guideline. This is one for females. When you see the rate of growth, from ages 6 to 19, what can you do? So start adding some speed, 6 to 8 years. The flexibility is from 6 to 10 years. Obviously, you want to, like I said, add skill training between 8 and 11. Be very, very careful when they start hitting puberty. And again, after the onset of puberty, you can get on to, more of an aerobic endurance, start building a good aerobic base. Usually 13, 14, they've hit puberty, they're ready to take on strength training. And then it's very comparable and similar to males as well. So the next chart will show you for the males. Just keep in mind that the speed does change a little bit for males. It was 6 to 8 for females. Here we're looking at introducing speed between ages 7 and 9. Again, skill training, like I said, it's 9 to 12 years. And again, males are going to start hitting a growth spurt somewhere between that 13 to 14. So you can really start adding some strength training program, usually done a good 12 to 18 months after they hit puberty. So keep these two charts handy. They are going to be very, very useful when you start structuring a training program for young children and youth.
Dr. Radkar, if I may just add, if that's good.
Yep.
So I'm just going to add on a little bit about some of these golden nuggets you can take home, especially for those of you who are coaches or parents with young athletes. So I'm going to bring you back to the female chart. Just to give you a little bit more information, because I know it's quite a lot of stuff on one chart. Periods of accelerated adaptation actually means if you were to focus on developing these specific components at the correct time, that child and youth would have his ability be very quickly developed, and possibly he will gain an advantage in that sense. So what do I mean by advantage? So I'll give you an example. Sorry, I'm just going to mute off some of the guys. Okay, so I hope you can hear me again. So sorry, I just want to draw your attention to what we call or term as peak height velocity over here. So if you can see that. So peak height velocity is basically the fastest rate of growth of change of height during a child who is going through puberty. So this peak height velocity is something which right now most countries are using the measurement of peak height velocity to actually track puberty. Now, the big question as parents and coaches, we always ask this question: how do we define that puberty has started? We utilize this tool called peak height velocity. Now, for the girls, if menstruation or the menstruation cycle has begun, it is very clear that they already have begun their peak height velocity. So if you have a young teenage girl who has her menarche cycle on, you can rest assured that she has already begun puberty. Now, using peak height velocity, we also can trace backwards using estimates of understanding these periods of accelerated adaptation. So what I mean is, for example, you understand that once puberty has finished, it is the best time. I'll repeat that. It's the best time for you to start building on aerobic endurance for that young girl. It's also the best time to go into very gradual but formal strength training programs. Now, just before peak height velocity, you can also see that there is a component of developing speed. So in the whole cycle of a youth, there are two windows of opportunity between 6 to 8 years old and 11 to 13. Now, these two different speed windows gives you a little more potential for the child to quickly build speed. And speed is a very important component in triathlon. And this is something I need you guys to take note. Many people assume that triathlon is a sport on endurance, but I'll assure you that a lot of speed is required for triathlon. So yesterday, we had a conversation with some of us, and that's what we'll cover on Friday itself, that speed in triathlon actually means that for world-class runner, the men are running under 29 minutes or 29 minutes, and the women are running at 32, 33. So what exactly is speed? Okay, so I hope this gives you a good idea of when are the best times to develop particular areas. And for the boys, it's a little bit different. Obviously, the peak height velocity occurs much later. And so they can also begin aerobic endurance training. Now, just take note, I'll just add on what Dr. Radkar mentioned. The strength training component comes in a little bit later because most boys have very significant change in bone density and the bone growth itself. And hence, that's why they require 12 to 8 months more after PHV so that they will not have growth-related injuries. And for those of you who are familiar or you work with young teenage boys, you realize simple things like osgood-scalatal disease, or if they have shin issues with pain that cannot be accounted for, those could possibly, not always the case, be growth-related issues. So you want to just back off the strength training a little, and it usually comes 12 to 18 months after. Other than that, all the other components, as you can see, remains pretty much within the same type of pattern, and it's all taking its dressing from peak height velocity. All right. Now, one last thing before I hand this back over to Dr. Radkar. If you look at both slides, you will see that there is this skill. So what is skill training? So in India, it's cricket, I suppose, is one of the most famous sports, or it's the most popular sport. So if you are going to get a child to learn a new skill or want him to excel at picking up skills fast, you would look at the skill training phase. And so it's 8 to 11 for girls, roughly, and 9 to 12 for boys. And in triathlon, let's bring that back to triathlon. Many age groupers are struggling with swimming. Why do they struggle with swimming? Because they cannot get the internal rotation, high elbow in the swim. And that's because the skill acquisition, if you start swimming at the age of 35, it's going to be an uphill task. However, if you introduce swimming at a much younger age, about 8 or 9, that child is going to be able to feel the water. He's going to be able to get the internal rotation. Okay, and it's going to be much easier for someone learning swimming at a much younger age. And I hope this can give you a good indication of how you utilize these phases. Okay, I'm going to hand this over back to Dr. Radkar. Here you go. I've spoken too much.
Thanks. No, thank you very much for clarifying a couple things. So that was very, very useful. And again, we discussed some, age-appropriate development. Again, based on the chart, you can go and see what periods complement to what adaptation. So if I were to ask you, which would be the type of development based on biological maturity, that's a question you have to ask yourself based on the age group that you coach. So, for example, if I have athletes who are between 7 and 10, would I be giving them any endurance running or endurance swimming? So you can type in your answer, yes, no, maybe, perhaps, whatever you feel. No, yeah, absolutely not. Obviously, you want to save the endurance bit for a little later on. So everyone's hitting no now. Very good. Thank you very much. Similar to that, if I have athletes between 6 and 10 and 6 and 11, do I really want them jumping on hurdles, or do I really want them involved in any contact sports? So you can type in your answers on that one. No, yeah, Kavish, great answer. So yeah, you want to save, you want to save team sports. Yes, but perfect. So yeah, obviously you want to encourage and have team games, and we'll cover that in the later slide. But oh, there's an interesting answer which says yes. So obviously no contact till they are 13 or 14, right? It's going to be very, very difficult. Similar, do you really want young kids riding on the road, athletes age 6 and 10? Absolutely not. You want to encourage cycling because they're still gaining their balance and their gait, but you want to do it in a closed environment, right? So you know where the road is closed, or a lot of kids are going to ride in their colony where they know there is going to be a restricted movement. One of the biggest mistakes that coaches and parents make is that they consider their age to be similar to their child's age, and then they start pushing things on the child, thinking that they will be able to adapt much more. So be very, very careful that you're not overbearing too much, especially on the young children between 6 and 10, 6 and 11. Let them develop basic skills, and then you can slowly add stuff. Okay, so just some fun training tips. Obviously, any young kids that you coach, you have to be creative. Otherwise, they'll get bored and they will never show up again. If you try and do the same sessions over and over, it's not going to be fun. It's going to be really monotonous. And that's probably a good reason why so many people are interested in triathlon, is that there's no monotony in the workouts that we do, right? As opposed to just one sport like running or cycling. There's always something different going on in our calendar on a daily basis. Give athletes the luxury to create, new skills, new drills. One of my favorite thing is that I give my youth fun games in the pool. I give them a kickboard or a pull by, and I make them create their own games. And it's a lot of fun to see how they develop. Obviously, try and give them a variety of skills, running backwards, running sideways. If you have grass available, small hops, bunny jumps, lateral jumps. Obviously, like I said before, start introducing games, but change the rules of the games so that they start using their cognitive mindset. They're learning new skills, but they're also strategizing while getting at it. Uh, Focus on flexibility. Flexibility is very, very, very important. I wish I would have seen this lecture 30 years ago. I'm pretty horrible in flexibility myself. And same with balance. There was none of this talk going on when I was competing. So flexibility, balance, it's going to be a key asset when they are competing and actually lifelong. So it's same as coordination. And then you can introduce ball games, so simple ball drains. Obviously, cricket is huge, soccer or football, basketball. Uh, when we look at training, try and make the training invisible. And one of our favorite activities when I was in swimming at IUP was that the coach used to drop us at a park and we used to play games. And then as part of the training, we didn't even realize we had to jog back to the swimming pool, which was roughly a 3 to 4K distance. And at back that time, we just were divided in teams, and we used to think that the fastest person to get is going to get get a medal or get the evening off from practice. It was just his way of making us run that distance. Obviously, youth playgrounds and national surroundings. I know it's been a little difficult given the situation we are in, but as much as possible, if you have access to community playgrounds or society playgrounds, please use them. Most importantly, teach kids to have fun. And I'll give you an example of my son that he's going to be 5 in October. And last year, just before COVID hit, we had enrolled him into a basketball type program where they were teaching the fundamental skills, but the instructors were so intense that most of the young kids between ages 4 and 7 were literally scared. It wasn't fun, and like it says, they won't stay. Including my son, they never went back. So make sure we don't make these mistakes of pushing kids too hard, too young. Give them the opportunity to enjoy whatever sport it is that they choose, and then later on you can get them into a more competitive spirit. Last bit of training tips, obviously, like has been discussed, consider the chronological, biological, and training age. Make plans which are adaptive to those. Keep in mind, I already spoke about this earlier, that the girls are going to have different growing patterns. So especially as coaches, parents, we have to be a little more empathetic towards that on both ends, dealing with boys who may lag behind because girls are going to grow faster. And as girls start hitting puberty, you have to understand what they go through. So offer as much support as much. Yeah, too much too early. Obviously, there's a big reason why some athletes who start competing at ages 6 to 10 don't really make it later on because they tend to burn out. If competition becomes too intense, the pressure is just too much. Some athletes just land up quitting because they can't handle the pressure, and it's not fun, right? Leads right into the next point, that play and enjoy other sports, which is huge. Growing up, my parents actually did not like this much, but even though I was a national level swimmer, I played tennis for my college, I played cricket for my college, I played table tennis. I used to play soccer with my friends. So try and engage your athletes in other sports, especially in the off season, so that it's fun for them, and you'll be surprised how much strategy they can gain from other sports as well. Obviously, different motivations is huge, and motivations can change, and it's true for every single one of us who's listening to this. So all of us have days when we are really motivated, we are really looking forward to that week's workout, and then we have days when the next day comes and you just don't even want to get out of bed. Start being a little more empathetic towards your kids, towards the kids that you coach, that even they are going to suffer motivation. And then when their motivation is low, figure out ways that activities are fun and they will still take part. Again, I think we've said this enough times already, too much too early can lead to burnout. So be very, very careful and play as many sports as possible.
Sorry, can I just add in, if I may?
Yeah, yeah.
One thing that I've brought my personal experience with coaching. I used to work with athletics, and I found that through my journey, sometimes we need to be very clear about the definition of speed. So when we're talking about speed development, that's exposing to a child whereby he's going to develop a very quick ability to turn over his arms and legs. That's one component of extremity speed. The other component of speed would actually be that top end speed, which will obviously pay dividends down the road. Now, when you are talking about developing speed in its purest form, you're talking about distances over 30 meters to 60 meters. That's pure speed. One of the big misconceptions is people assume that running 400 meters or 800 meters would actually be speed, and that's not speed at all. Yes, it may be speed training in an Ironman type training, but that's not speed in its purest form. Now, why I'm highlighting this is because when you put an interval that goes past speed and touches the speed endurance component, that young child is going to be generating a lot of lactate buildup. And trust me, huge lactate levels are very, very uncomfortable. For those of you who came from a swimming background, if your coach made you swim 100 repeats all out, or if you ran 300 meters on the track all out, you would know what that feels like. Now, as what Dr. Radkar mentioned, be careful because there's a huge, young children do not like that kind of pain, and they cannot tell the difference between that kind of pain and why I need to go through that to be good. So if you're talking about a young child, again, guys, you have to be very sensitive that getting them to be exposed, especially to a misconception of what speed is, and exposure to too much lactate buildup is very, very unpleasant. Okay, so I hope you found that useful. I hand this back over to Dr. Radkar.
Okay, so we'll discuss a little bit about the specialization that happens. Again, you can always refer back to the two charts that Eugene talked about in detail as well. That, what can you add when someone is 6 to 10, and then how you can slowly translate that from 11 to 18. The best point about here is that it says and swimming. So majority of us triathletes, I'm actually not I'm the exception to the rule, that majority of us started swimming at a young age. So try and expose your youth or your kids to swimming, even if it's just done as a life-saving activity, right? Even if they know how to swim, that's going to pay dividends later on in life. And unfortunately in India, that's the last thing that gets put. And I think Eugene wants to make a point. Good. Okay. Again, we have limited resources in terms of gymnastics and figure skating, but if you put them into a basic, athletic program, they are going to teach them, some coordination, a little bit of tumbling. Just make sure they have enough mats before they are. If you see kids doing cartwheels and rolling on their back on the mud, there's a big issue. So be very, very careful of the environment that you put your kids or someone is putting their kids in. Late specialization, obviously, we look at, obviously, when someone is beyond 14, beyond 16 is when we start introducing that, long distance, cycling, long distance running, and how that translates to performance later on. Keep in mind that kids can be taught, techniques from a very young age. So as young as 7, You can start teaching them what's the right way to run. That's not what we are talking about here, but you don't want 7 to 10-year-olds running 10Ks. And it happens quite a lot. So be very, very careful because they're just not ready. Their hearts are not similar to what our developed hearts are. So you have to be patient with them. Similar with cycling skills, they're still learning, coordination and balance. Like I said earlier in the Nirmal is saying hi, Nirmal, hi. Like I said before, because someone is new to cycling, be careful in what type of environment they learn cycling. Later on, obviously, you're going to start moving more towards the performance aspect. How are they pedaling? How are they gaining speed? So be careful about specializing early versus late. So we've discussed this a little bit, but just to give you a few things to keep in mind, that if you expose kids at a very young age, to specialization in sports, you may have a few issues. Obviously, if they haven't hit puberty and you're starting to push them, there's going to be a lot of overuse injuries, especially in young swimmers. You see that those who are really doing heavy workouts from ages 8, 9, by the time they get to 11, 12, the most common complaint is shoulder tendonitis, especially if they're doing a lot of freestyle and butterfly. Again, there's a lack of physical literacy, which can lower performance. You may think that just pushing them will increase their performance. It's not so much the case. Again, pushing kids too hard, too fast, too soon, trying to get them into a competitive spirit at a very young age can lead to mental burnout. I've seen that happen with me, and I still see that happening around me a lot. That even athletes our age come out too strong, and within the first year they want to move from a 1K to a full marathon, and by the time the year comes in, they are done after just finishing one marathon because they're just not enjoying. They're not enjoying the process. They've gone too hard too soon. They either got themselves injured or just mentally it's becoming too overwhelming to get up every morning and do a workout. We don't want to see that, especially in young adults and the youth. Obviously, like I said before, 14 to 16, especially in India, is where you see a lot of kids retire from sport. It's funny that they're retiring at that age. It's that age when they can really start seeing impact for all the hard work they've done in the past, but they've just burnt out. They can't handle the pressure, and they just decide to focus on their studies or whatever that is, but they do not want to be associated with one sport.
Okay, what I'd like you to do, just get a bit of to get a bit of fun right now in the chat right now, guys. So if you see the first line, agility, balance, and coordination, can you type in one sport, not triathlon, which you think can develop agility, balance, and coordination? Type it in right now. What are some of the sports? Yes, tennis, gymnastics, football, swimming, badminton, soccer. Yeah. What's the #1 sport in India?
Cricket.
Yeah, cricket. Where is where the guys from Tamil Nadu? Where what is where are you guys housed in? What sport is that? With your courts. Something India is pretty good at as well. Rowing. Okay, now you have an Olympic rower. Not so much of agility. Good coordination. Yes, puja, squash. Okay, so that's some of the sports, and you realize that many sports develop agility, balance, and coordination. Next one, running, jumping, and throwing. What sports? Type it in the chat that has one of at least two of this: running and jumping, or jumping and throwing. Track and field, volleyball, basketball.
Yeah.
Nice.
Cricket. Someone's put cricket. Handball. Yes. Yeah, good one.
Okay, water polo. Water polo, no running, swimming. Okay, last line. So we have a little, it gets a bit tricky with the word. So let's remember KGB, the Russian secret police. You can remember that? Okay, KGBs. Kinesthetic, gliding, buoyancy, and striking. Okay, I'm going to explain what kinesthetics mean. It's the feel of things. So for those of you who are swimming, you hear this all the time, feel of water. Can you feel that? If you're out of the water, Dr. Radkar, for 3 days, what happens? When you hop back in, you can't feel the water.
Can't feel the water, yeah.
Yes, and in COVID, some people have not been swimming for more than a year. So you can't expect that.
Year and a half now, year and a half.
A year and a half. Okay, so feel of the water. Another one, guys, if you play basketball, and when you shoot the ball, you will actually know if the ball can go in or not, just by that shot. That's also feel. Okay, what sport has gliding? Type it in. What sport has gliding? A gliding component. Swimming. What else apart from swimming? Jumping. Okay. Yes, skating. Well done, guys. Skating, skate scooter, skiing. That's gliding. Okay. Next one. It's just simple. Buoyancy. What? There's only 1 or 2 sports that has buoyancy. Yeah, and that's swimming. Okay. And the last one, striking. There's 2 types of striking. One, striking with your limbs. What kind of sports involve striking with your limbs?
Karate, judo.
Yes, martial arts, football. Okay, you kick the ball. So martial arts. How about striking with an implement? What's India's top sport again? Cricket, badminton, squash. So have you seen some kids when the ball comes and they cannot hit the ball? Seen that in tennis? Okay, because they don't have that hand-eye coordination, right? Okay, so good one, guys. I hope you have some good examples. Yes, Mitun, sepak takraw. Very nice. So these are what we talked about, physical literacy. And remember, all children should have an exposure to all these 3. You can remember ABCs, RJTs, KGBs, Russian police. So that will give you that whenever program, and even in triathlon, don't just swim, bike, and run. In swimming, don't just swim, because you're going to get injured and you're going to get burnt out. Right? So think about how you can incorporate this, and it's very important as well. All right. So back to you, Dr. Radkar.
Okay, so I'm coming up towards the end of our presentation, and then we'll answer some questions. So just some, again, practical tools, how and when do we plan training? Again, ages 7 to 12, it says sampling here, which means basically try and expose them to as many sports as possible, work on, their balance, their flexibility, hand-eye coordination, all the good stuff. 12 plus is recreational. Again, you're going to start keep working on the basic stuff, start adding warm up and cool down, teach them the basic skills that even we implement. You're going to have some competition at this age. So again, try and make it fun. Don't make it too intense. Specializing is usually when you start seeing choose one sport over the other. Happens a lot in India that kids want to play cricket and badminton, or cricket and basketball, cricket and football. So this is where you start saying that, okay, as a parent or as a coach, we need to choose one or the other so they can do a little better. Investment is, again, that's what I was saying. If they don't burn out too soon, is 15 is when we start really going specialized training, because they have now well beyond puberty. They've gained a lot of strength. They've gained a lot of height. And this is where the competition is going to get intense as well. Plus, they've developed all the motor skills necessary that they can start handling, higher workouts. They can start working on their aerobic zones as well. So the first things first is to keep in mind, why do people take part in sport? And that is a question you have to ask yourself when a new trainee or your kid signs up for a program, right? And first thing is that a lot of us are in sport to get fit, but we also want to enjoy what sport brings to us. So in the sampling phase, we're looking, the kids to play, have fun while working on basic skills. Again, expose them to as many sports as possible. Specifically for triathlon, if you do have someone, then keep in mind that swim and run train techniques can be included at that age, but be careful about the bike. Again, try and do bike skills in a closed environment. Other sports, again, try and avoid as much non-contact or very minimal contact in case you are teaching them to play football or basketball, one of them. Specializing, again, you're going to narrow down. Like I said, I gave you a couple examples that you want to really now start focusing on one sport, whether it's triathlon or cricket or basketball, whatever that is. I hope the answer is triathlon because it is for the ITF that I'm doing this talk. In triathlon, specifically, you can focus on one sport over the other. Keep in mind that we consider triathlon, swim, bike, run as one, but in between, you can have if someone's weakness is swimming or someone's weakness like mine is cycling, you can now start specializing and adding more sessions to turn that weakness into a strength. Obviously, investment is where you go all in. It's mostly where that, increasing workout, increasing intensity. Again, for triathletes, any level of triathlete, bike becomes a big focus because that's where the maximum volume is, even on race day, and you have to do the minimum sessions on the bike to get really fast. Obviously, you want to maintain swim and run, so you may have to create a cyclic plan where the volumes are now interchanged between the run or the brick, and then one week or the next week is more on the bike. In the investment phase, obviously, you are going to be focusing on one sport and one sport only. Even most of us listening to the talk are just plain and simple triathletes. I don't think anyone here is doing competitive triathlon along with competitive any other sport. We just don't, triathletes just don't have the time to even do swim, bike, run, and strength. So I just can't imagine anyone going into another sport as well.
I'll just hop in right here. This is one of the most interesting trends, and it's coming along not just with nations who are good in triathlon, and I'll mention what countries these are. So if you look at the United States, Great Britain, Australia, especially with the junior athletes, most of them end up as national top level runners as well. Here in Singapore, the fastest distance runners tend to come from a triathlon background, and it's very interesting. So yes, as much as we don't encourage triathletes to be national athletes at two different sports, this is a trend that you will see. And one of the reasons why triathlon or triathletes, obviously the standard of running is increasing. You also find that many triathletes remain injury-free because they are actually running way less, but yet the total amount of volume of training can actually be more than a normal distance runner. So that's an interesting fun fact for you to know. And for those of you who in the next couple of years begin to start working with good, talented, hardworking triathletes, you will also find that most of them will rise up the rank of at least state level and be very good state level runners. Yeah, so that's something for you to know. Pooja, do you want to hop in on this to make some comments about what you've seen with good runners in triathlon?
You are completely right, and even I myself have been one of the example for that. When I was into competitive triathlon, I also used to participate in swimming races and win national medals over there. Also, I was also like getting selected for national running competitions also. So yes, triathletes are that one breed who are much better than a single individual sport athlete like a swimmer or a runner or a cyclist due to the kind of training plan that we focus on.
Nice.
Yeah, someone's made a comment that most of his triathletes are water polo players. Obviously, you need strength as well, a lot of endurance to play water polo. So that, yeah, and that naturally translates on the bike. Yeah, and power as well. So if anyone here has not played water polo, please give it a whirl, and don't blame me for doing that. So just some take-home messages before we take any questions. When you're dealing with children and youth, try to add as much enjoyment. Try to give them a lot of play time, make sessions fun. Watch the distance, like I said, especially adolescents, pre-puberty. We're not training them to be marathon runners as yet. So keep a good eye on the distance. A rule of thumb is that if you're doing something, don't try and enforce that on the kids that you train. Very important, and I spoke about this, that focus on basic skills initially. Like I said, when I was swimming competitively, I wish someone would have given me this presentation on my flexibility and coordination. Beware of the adult mold, like Eugene pointed out in the picture, right? It's very, some kids will hit puberty at an earlier stage, so it's very easy to get carried away and feel like now they are more of a young adult, and we start pushing them. Again, injury prevention is huge. These kids are growing. We have to make sure we give their bones and their muscles the respect that they deserve. Last but not least, and this is very important, teach them positive values and ethics. Sport is meant to bring people together. Sport is a great way for nation building. There's so many characteristics that sport has given me and a lot of people around me. So having a positive outcome, of positive mindset, as we know in the past year, has been very important. Ethics are very important. So try and start teaching them respecting their opponents, fair play, staying away from supplements, all of those good points from a young age, and they will translate into a good program later on. Well, and that is that.
I'll just add on just before we go to the questions. So I just want to comment a little for all you guys to think. So you've seen this word, beware of the adult mole. I think many of us have heard that before. I'll just give you a bit of data based on my personal experience, and this is not just in triathlon, but across all sports. So my background includes working for close to 8 years at a Singapore sports school. And I believe in India as well, at state level and even at national level, you do have schools which specialize in sport. Now, one of the things that I found was that a lot of the school-going kids that were recruited by the sports schools in Singapore, we found that they were all born in the first half of the year. So 86% of them were born in the first half of the year. And what does that mean? So in one of the presentations on Friday, we'll talk about talent identification. Many of us are actually not picking real talent. A lot of systems are actually picking youths who have gone through puberty. And what you find is many of the talented youths, as Dr. Radkar mentioned earlier, we talk about the biological age and the training age. Youths who have a good head start with both biological and training age will obviously show better results when you conduct a special talent selection test based on time or speed. And youths who are late in the game, in puberty, will not be selected. So it's something you want to also think about, because one of the most common mistakes I see, especially in coaching as well, is, oh, he's a big, tall, strong boy. But don't forget, being tall and strong doesn't mean cognitively or by emotions and socially, he's ready to take that kind of training stress. Because as you know, a boy is not meant to do a man's job. So he can be 1.85 meters tall, but he can still behave like a 10-year-old inside his head because he's still, yeah. I think you guys know where I'm heading. So be really cautious about this adult mode. It doesn't mean that a child who is big and strong at a young age means that he can take an adult's load. Don't get caught into that trap. All right, cool. Let's take some questions. So I'm going to invite Dr. Radkar and Pooja as well. So Pooja's a World Triathlon Level 2 coach as well. And I want to bring her experience with working with athletes, not just in her own area, but also from an Indian perspective. And so together with myself, we hope to answer some of your questions this evening. Okay, so put your questions through into the chat, and I'm going to start with a first one. So there was a question asking about, will running affect the height of children? I talk too much, so someone else should talk. So will running affect growth of a child?
Kaustubh?
It depends. Yeah, yeah, sure, I'll answer. It depends what kind of running you're talking about, right? So if someone is running just for play between 7 and 11, 7 or 12, it's not really going to have a negative impact. Now, if you have 7 to 12 years olds and they're running 5Ks, obviously they are going to have, it's going to have a negative impact. So like the chart said, you have to be very, very careful. So most cross-country programs or track programs, worldwide start at around age 12 when they start, coaching young kids to now start gaining up to 5K. So keep that in mind. Up till 12, try and limit the amount of distance anyone is running.
Yeah, so just to add on that, and this is a question which I think some of you are at the back of the head. So running and strength training, do they stunt your growth? And the answer and the research shows that no, it doesn't. This misconception of stunting your growth was found to have two key reasons, or actually one key reason. There's a lot of research with the Japanese, and they found that kids who were excessively involved with a lot of impact sport and strength training at the same time, the reason for their inability to reach potential height was due to the fact of a lack of nutrition. I'll repeat that, it's a lack of nutrition. And what that means is that when you're talking about a young child who's doing cricket and swimming and football and then long distance running, you need to be very careful that he's getting enough nutrition to support his growth. So the research has already shown that. On that note, do take note that children, pre-adolescents, have issues with their growth plates. So it does not affect the height, but when you're talking about growth platelets, it can be deformed because prior to puberty, they are not completely developed. And so that's something you want to take note of, especially if you're working with impact sport like jumping games or a lot of running. Okay. So I hope that answered your question. The next question would be, which age would be perfect to develop motor ability?
You can develop your motor abilities at a very young age, because that's like as a basic ability that we play with our kids, like with very young age of like 3-4 years onwards. You can make them play with your balls, or maybe they can like start learning some coordination skills and all. So yeah, motor ability can be developed at very young age, 3-4 years onwards.
Thanks, Pooja. And to add on that, how young can youth triathlon start?
Sorry?
How young can a youth start triathlon? How young can a kid start triathlon?
14, 15 onwards.
You can actually go younger.
Learn.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can learn. They can start learning at the age of 12, 13. But yeah, the competition, actual competition would be somewhere around 14, 15.
I'll just hop into my piece. I think kids 7 or 8, if you can swim, cycle, and run, you can do triathlon just for fun. So yeah, that's cute.
There are events for like tricycle, with the tricycle for younger kids for triathlon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, then again, I think I answered the question on weight training and the effect of children. Just recap again, it's usually a nutrition component that if you are including a lot of training, the child has to eat right. And just might be mindful that a lot of young teenagers and youth do not eat well. They just choose poor choices of food. Am I right, Dr. Radkar? Bubble tea. I don't know.
I mean, ice cream takes. Yeah, exactly. And a point with strength training in youth is that focus on posture and breathing. It's very, very important you teach them the right posture and breathing. Even if it's body weight, you have to focus on that, because that's the first thing I see in a lot of these child programs, that they're doing sit-ups and pull-ups and push-ups, and the form is just horrid. So yeah, you can introduce them to body weight conditioning, but focus a lot on the posture.
Okay, next question is it's going to be quite a tricky one, and I'll get Pooja to get this. Does being vegan affect a benefit an athlete? And I hope you're asking in terms from a youth perspective. So Pooja, do you want to hop in on this?
I would not try to change diet for a youth, because I would prefer that they should have all kind of nutrients at this age, because they are developing. I'm not personally a vegan fan. Of course, I would ask to avoid non-vegetarian because of the inflammation that is connected to it. But yeah, for youth, I would not suggest you to have any kind of those vegan specific diet or something.
And it's different from vegetarian, right?
Yes, it is different from vegetarian.
Yeah. Okay.
So basically no dairy.
Yeah, I don't think for youth we would suggest to go for no dairy products.
Go vegan.
They should eat dairy products.
Thanks for that, guys. Next one from Kavish. Is it agreeable that early training age gives better athletes? So you're talking about ultra marathons, full marathons, Ironman, considering that they were late into the sport. So is there any disadvantage? So let me rephrase that again. If you got in the sport late, in the late 20s, does training at an early age give them an advantage? I think Dr. Radkar, this is your question.
Yeah, I think, look, if you are training at a young age, or you know the skill set, it obviously will pay dividends later on. And the clear example is swimming, right? So if you learn swimming at a young age, you will have a little bit of an advantage. But the problem is, the younger you start, the likelihood of someone burning out is also much higher. So it's not an easy answer to give one way or another. Yeah, if all things equal, yes, the younger you start swimming, cycling, running, you will be in shape than someone who's fresh off the block. But at the end of the day, it comes down to smart training, your discipline, your nutrition, your strength training. And if you do all of those things right, then let's say 25 years on, it's an even skill set to have. And you have a lot of examples in triathlon, especially where a top level athletes are late bloomers. They started at 25, 26, and are now world champions. Nicola Spirik is a great example. At 40, 41, she's going in the Olympics, and very likely she will medal. Daniela Ryf, again, she's one of the examples who started young, but now she's blossomed into an Ironman athlete.
Okay. Pooja, question for you from Kevin.
Yeah.
When should you start zone training for kids?
So mostly what happens with kids is like they don't even have proper equipments to measure their zones or anything. So yeah, I mean, if we talk about Indian kids, the ones that I'm training, even if I want them to start their zone training at the age of 10 or 11, but I wouldn't have proper equipment to measure that.
This is my take.
And also there is another thing that with kids, they have higher HR also. So we have to think about that also. We cannot calculate kids' HR exactly like the way we deal with adults.
So Kevin, you asked this question. I'm going to draw you back to this slide. I hope you can see this. So for kids, this is my experience. I wouldn't even use zones. Now, if you're working with a kid who is pre-puberty, I would develop two key things: speed and skill. And it's always speed and skill. And it's very easy to develop speed and skill because you don't need zones for that. Does that make sense? So it would be, as I said, what is speed? It's just really short, fast stuff. And kids are really good at going fast. Dr. Radkar, you have a 5-year-old son. I believe he has only 2 speeds, stop and go. There's no, can you slow down him? No, he will stop when he needs to stop. Yeah, so it's just stop, don't walk, just stop, or go, and they go at max effort. So Kevin, I hope that gives you some idea. Yep.
And a lot of times the stop comes exactly when you don't want it to come. So keep in mind. And it's a hard stop. He will just sit down and that's the end of that. That's a sign that my strength training program is now started.
Okay, we've got the next question. How long does it take to become a mature, experienced triathlete if you're talking about world class? So I'll comment from an Olympic perspective, and then maybe Dr. Radkar, you can hop in on the Ironman distance. So an Olympic athlete would need close to about 8 to 10 years span life cycle. So if you are looking at someone making it to the Olympic Games in 2024, you should already have an Indian athlete racing on the World Cup circuit right now. Not junior, not finding them. They should already be racing at the WTS or World Cup circuit now. So if you are looking at the next Olympic Games in 2028, and that's in the United States, I think it's Los Angeles, this would be the perfect time. So you have about an 8-year cycle, and this athlete would roughly be of age 14 or 15. So that's typically. Now, there is this saying, 10 years or 10,000 hours. I think it's quite subjective, because if the quality of coaching is exponentially improved, you still need a number of years, but you might not need 10 years in that sense. Okay, so Dr. Radkar, you want to talk about successful Ironman world-class athlete, elite Ironman guys?
Yeah, I mean, elite Ironman champions are somewhere in this age group of 30 to 34, roughly for the women, and for the men, it's actually between 34 and 37, 38 when they start peaking. Keep in mind that a lot of these guys have cycled from a ITU or a WTS for a few years. I mean, 5 to 8 years of their life is dedicated for that. Jan Frodeno is a great example. He was a gold medalist. Then he translated to half Ironman distances for 4 to 5 years. Again, Daniel Arif, same. And now they are, at the peak of their career as Ironman athletes. So you're looking at a 10 to 12 to 14 year cycle. So it's not easy. You need to have this skills at a smaller distance. Then you graduate. Again, the John, Alistair and his brother are now getting into half Ironman. Javier Gomez is now a half Ironman champion. He still hasn't hit the full Ironman circuit. So give yourself 10 to 12 years from now. Again, someone who's doing half Ironmans somewhere in that 415 to 430 range right now has a good chance 5 to 8 years down the line to become an Ironman champion.
Javier Gomez has still one more Olympic Games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, one more. Yeah.
He's not gonna leave that easily.
Okay, good. Thanks for that. I'm going to go to the next question. So if you are 17 and a swimmer, how would you start triathlon? Pooja, do you want to get that?
Yeah. So if you're a swimmer and at 17, you might have started running also. And I think like mostly in India, I have seen this thing. Most of the athletes that have got into triathlon are of age 16, 17. Once they try their level best in swimming or running, and then later on they decide to get into triathlon. So it's not that difficult. You just have to start focusing on your cycling skill and improve your running at the same time. Maybe by 19, you can be a good triathlete.
And if I can add,
Yep.
yeah, start slow, because swimmers, for them 3800 is not much of a distance. But at 18, if you're thinking I'm going to go for an Ironman, you're going to be in a lot of trouble, because just to go from an Olympic, so 40 kilometers of cycling to 180 takes years and years of practice. So my advice is do a sprint, see how you like it, do Olympic a few times, then keep adding the next step.
Yes, and this is the trend that I have seen in India, that everyone wants to directly jump into half and full Ironman rather than starting it slow. Before even knowing the sport, they want to go into the longer distance, and that is like horrible. They end up having injuries because of that. So yeah, as Kaustubh said, start slow, start with sprint, do it a couple of times, get into that rhythm, understand the sport, and then move forward.
So this also adds on to Senthil's question about muscle development. So just be careful, because a lot of swimmers, when they come into the sport of triathlon, they tend to be like a fish out of water. So as Dr. Radkar mentioned, be careful with the running volume, because many of them, as much as they are very fit, they're fit from swimming. So they have a very strong heart, excellent development of aerobic capacity. But just be careful with the run volume, because especially for those of them who are slightly heavier from muscle mass, running too much, too fast, too soon is going to be a little tricky. Okay.
And also I would like to add something over here. When I switched from swimming to triathlon, I started doing more of cycling training, I came to know that I am having issues with my traps because of the hyperlexia that I developed during my swimming career. So yeah, that can also be one of the problem that you might face, because of the swimming. We are hyper flexible. We have flexibility, but we lack strength, which is required for triathlon. So we need to focus on that part also.
Okay, I'll get a next question. Any type of bike you should use for kids or adults? This is quite straightforward. For kids, start with any bike. Even a mountain bike will do. Start with whatever they're comfortable with. Don't get caught up into the trap of getting the fastest bike out there. As you heard just now from Dr. Radkar, kids need time and to work on developing their balance and coordination. So expect that the child is going to be falling with that bike. Same with adults. If you are new to the sport, I suggest to get a second-hand bike. And when you fall with your bike, and you're bound to fall a couple of times, it will save you a bit of heart issues. So yeah, I hope that most important is make sure that the bike fits. And right now, if you work with a good coach, I'm very sure the coach will be able to give you some basic sizing and fitting tips on how to get a good bike. Okay, so my advice to you is don't spend a fortune on it. Start with whatever. Even if you have something lying at the back of your home, it's perfectly fine. Okay, so make sure that you can go with that. For those of you, there are quite a number of questions. This isn't a swimming webinar, unfortunately. My advice to you is work with invest in coaching. There are coaches here, so invest in coaching. It's something I think many of us tend to shun away from. Remember that coaches bring a lot of value, and it helps you to expedite a lot of the issues you have. Okay, so for those of you who are looking at improving your swimming speed.
Yeah, and same with nutrition as well. There's some questions coming in on nutrition, so it's best to have an expert guide them because everyone's nutrition demands are different. So it'll be very difficult, to know are they even getting enough resources from their basic diet before allowing them to discuss on supplements or something like that.
I personally don't let sorry, I personally don't let any of my athletes, like young athletes, go for any supplement. I prefer them to have nutrients from the natural food. So if it's like really needed to get into supplement, then only go for it. Otherwise, prefer the natural food.
Yeah, I think young athletes should look for real food. And if they really are suffering from a particular deficiency, get that checked out with a medical professional. As you know, even coaches, we aren't qualified to dispense such information. So I think even you go to Dr. Radkar, he might even send you off to a qualified nutritionist or dietitian to whether that young child actually needs supplements or not. Yeah. In certain cases, I believe, yes, they can help to that extent. Okay. Last question. So you talked about Brownlee brothers and Jan Frodeno. So they graduated longer distances. And is it advisable to pursue a particular distance for the entire career? And how would you be versatile? Okay, so I'll just give you my 2 cents on these guys. I've watched the Brownlee brothers race from age 18. I was fortunate enough to work with them on the ITU projects where we were exposed to them, where Alistair came to the Olympic Games in 2008. So in his first Olympic Games, he was obviously a very promising athlete, and he went on to perform as where he is. Jan Frodeno was also at his first Olympic Games in 2008 in Beijing. He went on to win the Olympic Games, and then he transited into the longer distance. And you're right, Javier Gomez has been around for a very long time. And one common thing I can assure you for all these 3 athletes, all 3 have tremendous amount of speed. So all of these 3 guys, especially Javier and the Brownlee brothers, are all running. For instance, they are 28-minute 10K runners. I'm not sure if you can relate how fast 28 minutes over 10K.
So,
and yeah,
that's off the bike end.
I have raced with them during my World Championships in Australia, and they show that speeds on the screen over there. I could see they're running around 22, 23 km/h speed, and at that point of time, it was like, wow. Yeah.
So they always have speed, and if just for you to understand again, in terms of swimming ability, so Javier is a pool swimmer. He's able to swim 16:45. He did win one of his state swimming 1005 championships in Spain. And so the natural progression for the 4 of them would be, as they start to get older, they lose the ability, and this is very relative, they lose the ability to stay competitive with the younger guys. And if you look at the upcoming Olympic Games, you have the Norwegians, you have the French, and these are all the young guys up and coming. And I think they are struggling because age is not on their side. Now, when they progress up to the 70.3, it's technically racing at a slower speed and just holding that speed. And then they move up to the Ironman, whereby they're even going at a much slower speed, and they're just sitting around for the distance. So if you look at what's happening, most of them, and the trend that has happened over the last 15 years, is the really fast guys are now trying to extend their professional career by moving into the longer distances, so that they aren't as fast as before, but at the same time, they're still being very competitive. Yeah, so that's what the strategy is for them in terms of extension of their careers. So obviously, there are also those out of the norm. There are also good Ironman athletes who did not come from a very successful ITU background, but have also been very successful. And it just goes to show that endurance across the board, whether you're elite or an age group, can be developed with over time and space. It can develop. So if you start the sport at 30, you can still be a very good marathon runner. You can still run under 3 hours, but to break 2:10, maybe that's going to be pretty difficult. Okay. Dr. Radkar, do you want to add on about extension of careers?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's nothing wrong in sticking to one distance for the rest of your life. If you like something, if you enjoy it. I mean, Usain Bolt only ran the 100 and the 200 and the relays, and he was very, very happy. And so is the case with a lot of swimmers as well. You know, the swimmers will do one particular event and a relay. There's very few like Michael Phelps who are the jack of all trades, who will do 7-8 events. You can't do 7-8 events in Olympics, but if you like the sprint and the Olympic distance, try to be your best version in that distance. Just because someone is upgrading to you know, half Ironman or a full Ironman, you don't necessarily have to do it. I feel you can do those events for fun, but you will have to decide, do you really want to work on speed and power, like Eugene explained, or you want to be on the older side of things, where you get to sit around for 12 hours and race, you know, Ironman distances.
Right, so thank you so much.
Okay, nice. So I think we've got quite an amount of questions. Thank you very much for the questions. What's going to happen is we're going to have our trivia. And Harish, if you're still around, how many prizes do we have today? Because Pooja's thinking of the questions he needs to ask.
Same 5.
Same 5. Wow. Okay. So okay, so ladies first. Maybe you go with 2, and then Dr. Radkar will go with 2, and I'll go for 1. Questions for the day.
So which is the correct age to develop speed in female? Like, what are the 2 slots where you can?
Chat.
9.
Both of them. 9.
Okay, so the first
you have to
one,
mention both the blocks.
Yes, both blocks, write it in. It looks like Pradeep has got it. He's got the 2 blocks, so we'll give that to Pradeep. Nice. Okay, second question, Dr. Radkar.
This is a tricky one for me myself. So at what age would you add competition to both boys and girls? What?
That's really quick. 15 plus. Who wanted to put 15? Okay, so the first answer would be anyone put 15?
Pratik.
Is it Kartik?
Yeah, Pratik and Ujjwal says 15 plus.
Okay, 15 plus is the answer.
Plus.
So no one put 15.
Pratik
okay.
wrote 15.
Okay. Okay, good. Back to Pooja. One more question from you.
So what will be the right age to get into multiple sports, like developing sports? What will be the right age to put your kid into sport?
Oh, someone said 6. Winner. Nikhil Pawar, winner, 6.
Nice. Good. Last question from you, Dr. Radkar.
All right. So just give me an example of a different variation of a skill you would do with a child 6 to 9. what is something you can add to their training to make it fun? Pool fun game, Pooja. Pool fun game. Yeah, you want to make it fun. You want to make them run backwards, make them run sideways. So Pooja is one.
Okay, last question from me. So how many years would you look at if you're looking at having an athlete trying to be high performance or qualify for the Olympic Games? Okay, Pratik, have you won, Pratik? How many years?
Bijayan's put 10.
Okay, got that.
Bijayan's put 10. First
Okay,
one.
so Bijan, you got that. Okay, so thank you very much, guys. I hope you had a good time. Harish, do you have any questions or things you want to make a comment before we call it a close for the evening?
I'm good. I think thanks a lot, Dr. Pooja and Eugene, for patiently answering everybody's question. And it's great to see good participation. And I'm hoping that it will continue for the next 5 days too. As I said earlier, if you have any questions, feel free to write to us. We have recorded this session as well, and this will be made available on the Indian Triathlon YouTube channel as well. You can have a look at it. That's it from my side. Eugene, if you want to add anything, you can.
Okay, so what's going to happen tomorrow is Pooja, you're up with myself, and we're going to look at swimming and running. And so I know it's going to be a little tough from Zoom, but we're going to try to run through some of the basic skills that are required, very important, especially if you're looking at developing the sport. And so we're going to try to revisit what we talked about, fundamentals of swimming and running in triathlon itself. Okay, so I hope to see you. For those of you who have friends who missed out this session, I encourage you to get them back on. It is still not too late to join the next couple of days because we'll be running this entire program till the end of the week, and it's going to get pretty technical as well. So otherwise, thank you very much from Dr. Pooja and myself, and I wish you a great evening, and we will see you tomorrow. Cheers, guys.
Thank you. Hey guys. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Pooja ma'am.
Hi, sir. Thank you, Andy.
Okay, see you everyone. See you tomorrow.